What's up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. Today we got a story time of a teacher who claims that a student is faking his disability for like attention slash like privileges and stuff. Well, it turns out the teacher was wrong and the student actually proves that it's true. And this is actually a pretty crazy story, and normally it's the other way around. I've told stories on this channel where like a Gen Z kid would fake some completely fake disability or completely fake something really real, and then they get exposed. But this is actually the complete other way around, and it was a super interesting story that was submitted to me. And I know that you guys will enjoy this one, so leave a like on the video right now to claim your free nothing. It's a limited time offer. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and like stories, and with that being said, let's just jump right into it. Anyways, we're going to call the subscriber who submitted the story Chip. So anyways, Chip was in this class with one of his friends, and I think this was like a history class or an English class. Either way, it was it wasn't like a STEM class, like a science or math class. It was a English or history class. Let's just say it was a history class for the sake of it. That detail is not super important. And Chip had this friend who we're going to call Ben. So anyways, Chip and Ben, like, they always like getting classes together or whatever. And yeah, or they always just like, they tried to sign up for the same classes. And they also would go around asking all the kids who are older than them which teachers they should avoid. So they'd go around because they had a little bit of choice because they were in 7th grade. I think it kind of depends on the school. I know when I was in 7th grade, I had literally no choice of which teacher I got. I think I could choose like what language I wanted to take or if I wanted to do band or orchestra, but it really was not up to me. But at least at Chip and Ben's school, they were able to have a little bit of choice of which teacher. So they would go around and they would ask the older students before they signed up for classes next year, which teacher should we get? Which teacher should we avoid? And every single student said, you gotta avoid Miss Davenport no matter what you do. She's like, okay, I don't want to say she's super old in a bad way because some of my favorite teachers have been on the older side. That doesn't mean anything. But when I say she's super old, I mean she's like super set in her ways, and while like middle schools don't have tenure, she basically acts like she has tenure. Like, she basically acts like she can never get fired no matter what she does. And apparently she's just notoriously a menace. So anyways, right, so Chip and Ben are like, okay, well, we know for a fact we can't get this teacher. However, here's the deal. There was 2 English classes. We're just going to call it, or did we say, let's just say English, right? There were 2 English classes. One was Miss Davenport, and the other one was a super popular teacher. We'll call him Mr. Pugs. Sorry for that. We'll call him Mr. Pugs, right? Mr. Pugs was loved by everyone. Everyone wanted to be in that class. And the problem was that a lot of, like, it was very competitive to be in that class. Like, the way that this worked was you'd have a preference, but you also could submit like no preference if you didn't care, because you had like a few strong preferences or whatever that would almost guarantee you. But since everyone used their strong preferences on Mr. Pugs, unfortunately by the time 7th grade rolled around, because they went around 6th grade doing this, both Chip and Ben, they both got Miss Davenport as a teacher. And that was like the one, like, all the older kids were like, you know what, there's some cool teachers, there's some bad teachers, but honestly it doesn't matter. As long as you don't get Miss Davenport, then you're chilling. Yeah, so when Chip opened up the email from like the school, or I guess Chip's mom opened up the email and read them out as teachers, you know, it just like there was a pit in his freaking stomach, bro. Like, his heart sank when he heard he got Miss Davenport. So anyways, about a week before school, or the school year started for 7th grade, Chip and Ben were hanging out, and Chip was like, dude, like, how bad do you really think that Miss Davenport is? And Chip and Ben were going back and forth, kind of talking about, I don't know, like, whatever, it's, you know, it's probably not that bad. It's probably the older kids, like, scaring us or whatever. We're probably just being dramatic because, I don't know, man, like, there's definitely been, like, I can look back at my time, like, oh, when I was in 8th grade, when I was in 10th grade, being like, this teacher's the worst. Like, you'll never pass in his or her class. It's the worst class ever. And then literally 1 year later, when I'm doing significantly harder stuff and I have perspective, I'm like, oh, actually, well, I was just, you know, that's actually just how normal classes are. Like, that actually was really normal. That wasn't that bad at all. So, yeah, that also can happen. So they were kind of thinking, okay, maybe they're just being dramatic because they're in the midst of the class right now. Maybe she isn't great, but like, how bad could it really be? And those are usually like the famous last words when you say, how bad could it really be? Well, they were about to find out exactly how bad. Okay, so the first day of class rolls around, and Chip and Ben don't have any other classes together except Miss Davenport's class. So the first couple of classes Chip was in was pretty good, not too bad, but they eventually get to Miss Davenport's class, and Chip and Ben meet up a little bit before class. They kind of look at each other like, "All right, man, here goes nothing into the abyss." So, anyways, they walk into the English class. And, Miss Davenport is just sitting at it. You know how some teachers would be like, "Hey, class, like, what's up? Welcome, sit down wherever." Or they kind of just, like, let the class, like, you walk into the class and everyone's talking, right? It's very, like, chill, relaxed environment. Or, people are kind of, like, nervously shifting around. But there's a little bit of, like, good energy in the air. Well, that just did not happen. When Chip walked into that classroom, it was dead silent. And the reason it was dead silent is Miss Davenport was telling everyone who came in, like, silence, no talking during my class unless you were called on, blah, 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 whatever. Or unless it's like you're supposed to do that. And I think some kid probably was talking. She was like, "Silence!" And, the whole class was like, "Oh, okay." So Chip sits down, and Ben, like, they kind of have, like, they came in a little late. Okay, they didn't come in late, but they basically came in by the time class started, which, especially in the first day of class, is almost like coming in late, but it's not, you know what I mean. So he sits down, and Ben kind of sits kind of far away. So anyways, they're sitting there, and Miss Davenport is like, "Welcome to Grammar 112, or I don't know, man, like some kind of difficult, remember, this could also be a history class, so these details are not super important. But what I'm trying to say is she goes through and explains the syllabus, and it is, like, you could just tell it was going to be bad. They were going to have, like, a quiz on the material every single day. And every single day you need to study the night before. You're quizzed on the homework to see if you've done it or not, basically. Not even if you've done it or not. Like, knowing this teacher, the problems are probably going to be also absolutely impossible. Yeah, so, and then after that, she's basically saying that you have, like, a limited bathroom policy, that if she finds you're going to the bathroom too often, you'll be banned, which, like, you could probably, like, appeal that to, like, the principal and get whatever. Yeah, what I'm trying to say is just, like, she was very clearly going to be one of the worst teachers ever. Like, she was very clearly going to just be a thorn in their side. So, yeah, at this point, Chip is in his head. It's like, oh, my God, like, of course I got, like, Miss Davenport. Of course that happened, whatever. Okay, so let's jump a few weeks in. The class is absolutely terrible. Like, this class is, no joke, really bad. So they're going through, and, Chip and Ben are, like, just trying to, like, keep afloat. Dude, this is 7th grade. You're not supposed to be absolutely smashed. And the thing is, they, like, talk to the other class because there's supposedly the other history class or English class. Remember, I'm just going to call it history. I'm going back and forth because you just got to know that it's not a math. That's all you got to know. So the other, like, history, English class, whatever, they were talking to them because, these teachers are supposed to kind of roughly teach the same curriculum. They're supposed to roughly cover all the same topics. And I'm sure you've experienced this at your school or whatever, that one teacher is known as the easy teacher, one teacher is known as the hard teacher. They both cover the same topics, but it's, like, how difficult they want to go. Like, I know for a fact, like, especially when you get higher up, when it comes to math classes, like, you can learn everything in Algebra 2, but your teacher can choose to give you an easy quadratic problem or, like, a quadratic problem that's going to take you, like, the entire page to solve. You know what I mean? Like, they could give you a ridiculous problem with a ton of, like, trig functions in there, or they could be nice and easy. So it's kind of the same deal here, but, like, Ms. Davenport was just so much. The people in the other class were actually really loved the class. That's a sad thing, too, is, like, not only did the people in the other version of this class not hate it, they actually really loved the class. They were actually enjoying learning what they were learning. And so Chip and Ben were, on the weekends, they used to, like, hang out together to go outside or maybe play some video games or hang out at the mall or something. Now, when they got together in the weekends, it was just to, like, prepare for, like, just to do the work, to try and survive in this class, which is absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, so you guys might be thinking, okay, well, the title of this video isn't really lining up with what I'm saying so far. Wait, be patient, we're getting to that right now. So an important bit of information is that Chip, the subscriber who submitted the story, has ADHD. I'm sure that there's probably about a third of my audience, because you guys love this background gameplay, probably about a third of my audience, like, has it, maybe diagnosed or not diagnosed. I don't know what the percentage is in the population, but I do know that probably a lot of you guys do. Or if you don't personally have it, you might have some traits that are similar, or you might know someone who has it, diagnosed or not diagnosed. So yeah, it just, for the guys who don't know, I mean, I don't think I have it, right? I have some family members who do. Like my grandmother, who might be watching this video, does have it, right? It makes it a lot harder for you to focus. I'm not going to try and explain it. You guys can explain in the comments, especially if you have it, a lot better. But what you got to know is that if you have like a doctor's notice or you have verified that you have it, well then in a lot of cases, you'll be able to have extra time when it came to taking tests and all these other things. I don't want to get into the debate about it because I don't really care to debate about it. But I mean, at the end of the day, if it's going to take you, if you have like something that you can't control that makes it harder for you to finish the exam in the same amount of time, you normally get some more time to do it. So anyways, the first test was coming around. And so anyways, it was the day before the first exam. And this, like, dude, it was like a crazy exam, unlike anything that Chip and Ben have ever encountered ever before. Yeah, so anyways, the teacher is going, or Miss Davenport is going over, you guys need to study 26 hours on the next day, sleep never, okay, she wasn't exactly saying that, but that's kind of how Chip was interpreting it. And so anyways, Chip eventually raises his hand because Miss Davenport doesn't say anything about like accommodations. And normally what you have to do is you have to go to the teacher, and this is what I've been told, this is what I've seen, it's not what I've personally done, so if I get any of this wrong, my bad. But basically, if you have one of these accommodations, one, I think you do have to register with the school or whatever, but you also then, I think, have to inform your teacher, especially if your school doesn't give them a heads up, or at least you want to communicate with your teacher so that they're not caught off guard, and it can definitely give you the right, situations so you can do this. I know a lot of times, at least in my high school, my friends who had these accommodations, they would sometimes take the test in a completely different area because it would need to be, they had more time to do it. Therefore, they would maybe get there earlier or stay later. And it was just better to have it in a different spot than the other allotted time for your test taking or whatever. So sometimes that would be the case. So obviously with that, you want your teacher to be informed. I know at least in college right now, like teachers saying, hey, if you have an accommodation, give me a heads up a week in advance, we'll figure it out. Right? So anyways, Chip raises his hand. He's like, hey, what's the policy for if you have an accommodation when it comes to this test? How do you go about that? Very fair question. And this is when Miss Davenport, and this is why the title of this video is true. Miss Davenport scoffs. She gives a little bit of a snicker, right? She kind of laughs a little bit. And she's like, in this class, I don't listen to that fake garbage. Everyone takes the same test for the same amount of time. So then, Chip responds back man, respectfully, I have a doctor's notice. I have a piece of paper saying because of the way I was born, I just can't compete it the same way. I just need more time to solve this, to do this problem. I'm not asking for an easier exam. I'm not asking for a different exam. I'm just asking for what every other teacher is willing to grant me because we've all agreed that it makes sense. And the teacher laughs again and says, maybe in those other classrooms, but that doesn't fly in this classroom. So Chip is like, what the frick, bro? What? And he looks over, and Ben is looking at him with this look of what? Because Ben doesn't have it, but Ben's been boys with Chip for a while and just knows about this and has never ever seen a situation like this ever happen. Yeah, so after the class kind of wraps up, Chip is like, okay, let me talk to this teacher one-on-one. Not knock some sense into her, but knock some sense into her. So anyways, Chip goes up and goes up to the desk. Miss Davenport is packing up her stuff. This is the last class of the day. Everyone's walking out. And Ben kind of slowly walks out and then kind of waits outside because obviously he wants to see what's up. So Chip's like, hey, maybe you haven't had anyone with ADHD or some kind of medical preference or just something like this in your class before. It's pretty standard across the board for everyone that, I have X amount of extra time or 150% time. I don't know exactly what it is. It's just I was born this way. This is not something I'm trying to pull a fast one on you, but also this isn't unique, and I'm not really asking for anything here. It's just kind of just is. And, Ms. Davenport's well, it kind of just is, in my classroom that you're not getting it. Everyone gets the same amount of time to take the test. Doesn't matter what happens. Like, if a classmate came in and broke his foot, I'm not going to give him twice as much time to do it. And Chip in his head was like, that's not a one-to-one comparison. Like, that doesn't make any sense, but okay. He's like, look, I don't want to act like get anyone else involved. And she's like, well, don't. Like, your grade's going to depend on not getting anyone else involved. And Chip's like, wait, so you're saying that, like, if I talk to anyone else, you're going to negatively affect my grade for that? And she's like, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that, like, if you want to be in good terms in my class, like, don't bring anyone else in. So at this point, Chip is like, whoa, he has this weird feeling. By the way, if a teacher ever says something like this to you, immediately bring someone else in. Like, that is a weird thing to say. You know what I mean? Like, to say that, like, oh, no, you can't contact any other teachers for the way I'm acting. That is a red flag. Anyway, so Chip's like, okay. And Miss Davenport's like, yep, I'll see you tomorrow at normal time, because everyone gets the same amount of normal time. So Chip walks out. He turns to his friend, and his friend's like, dude, what happened in there? And he's like, dude, like, she just, like, mocked me for, like, 2 minutes straight and then said no. And his friend's like, dude, that's, like, messed up right there. So anyways, Chip's like, okay, well, yeah, I think I'm going to go to the principal in this one. Real quick, if you're watching this video, comment teacher down below. If you're on YouTube, leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications as always. And also, if you're on YouTube, I post these on Spotify. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, I also post these on YouTube. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, please make sure that you have followed the podcast on Spotify, rated it 5 stars. And also, if you see a poll pop up on your Spotify, please answer it. I think it helps me out. Anyways, though, so Chip is going and he's walking towards the principal's office. Yeah, so anyways, right, so Chip and Ben are kind of just hanging out, like, outside. Well, no, they're not hanging out, but they're debriefing after that whole thing went down. And Ben's like, dude, what are you going to do? And Chip's like, well, I mean, I think I'm going to go to the principal on this. Because, yeah, in a situation like this, especially in my opinion, if the teacher's like, don't go to the principal, like, let me do my terrible thing anyways. Like, okay, yeah. Anyways, though, so Chip's like, okay, like, I have a pretty solid case here. I mean, unless she denies something, then, it's all really is word of mouth. Like, worst case scenario, the principal Chip says everything. The principal comes in, and she denies everything. However, she does now have to actually give him the extra time. Best case scenario, she's super like, oh, no, like, of course I'm right. I said everything that he said I said. And then she not only has to give him extra time, but maybe she, gets in trouble and doesn't do it as many people in the future, right? So either way, kind of seems like a win-win scenario. The only downside is if she lies and says she didn't say all the other stuff, that yes, Chip might get extra time. However, she might grade it extremely incorrectly because, Chip directly went against what she said. So it's not an exact win-win here. And there's like a lot of risk, not a lot of risk. There's a little bit of risk. However, I do agree that it is a pretty good idea to go to the principals. I mean, you can comment right now if you're on YouTube or respond to the Q&A question on Spotify. What would you do in this situation? I actually am kind of curious. Would you go to the principal here knowing that there's a chance that the teacher lies? It's word versus word, and it's the word of some like snot-nosed 7th grader versus like a tenured teacher, basically. And you're probably going to lose that. So you would get the extra time. However, there would be a big chance that you would just be hated in this class. I mean, Chip was probably already not liked that much right now, but it would just be a whole new level. I think I would. Anyways, though, so Chip's like, yeah, I'm just going to go to the principal's office. So Chip goes in and goes see the assistant. And she's like, hey, like, what's up? And he's like, hey, can I speak to the principal? And she's like, yeah, actually, I can definitely sub you in. Just wait here for 15 minutes. So anyways, Chip's kind of sitting there, kind of collecting his thoughts, thinking about exactly what he's going to ask here. And about 15 minutes goes by, and the assistant's like, okay, you can go in now. So Chip enters the principal's office. He enters in the room where the principal is. He sits down, and he basically just explains the whole situation. I'm not going to waste your time because you've already watched exactly what happened. Chip basically just says what he told me, which is what I told you. So by the end of it, the principal's like, wow, okay, that's fairly serious. Like, you're sure this is exactly how things went down? Because, this is pretty big if you're trying to paint your teacher in a false light that they're really not. And at this point, Chip really did have to make really had to think, like, okay, she could totally, like, she could so rug me and just like have like, what would I do if she denied what I said? But also Chip was like, okay, one, I'm telling the truth and hopefully the truth will prevail no matter what. But also two, I bet she's arrogant enough in the way that she thinks that she will actually back up that she said what she said. So yeah, Chip's like, yep, everything I said is 100% true. And he's like, I can't guarantee that she's going to admit to it, but what I said is true. Which almost felt like a little bit like, I think maybe Chip should have just like not even said that, but whatever, right? So eventually the principal's like, okay, well, yeah, let me call her up. So anyways, the principal gets the teacher on the line. Normally the teacher would have been asked just to come into the principal's office, but it was, I think she was done with the class. She's probably driving home. I think the principal like was to call to be like, hey, can you come in? And she's like, hey, like I'm on the road. Like, why am I being called? And the teacher's like, hey, so we have a student that has, ADHD and like has a doctor's notice that he can get extra time. And then the teacher goes on, or the principal goes on to rattle off everything that was said, everything from everything minus the don't tell the principal, because Chip was smart enough to not include that in the initial assessment, because if that's when she would start denying. Well, I don't know if it's smart enough, but that's what he chose to do. So anyways, the teacher, there's a little bit of a pause, a little bit of a silence after the principal says basically what, she said to him. And that's when she said, yes, that's how I run my classroom. Like, Mr. Principal, I think says the actual name, but Mr. Principal, you've let me run my classroom the way I've run my classroom for the last 20 years. Have we not gotten exceptionally good grammar scores on the SAT or SSAT or whatever the whatever is called? Have I not given you these many like great students like every single year? Like, have I not done my part? Am I not allowed to run my classroom the way I want to run it when I've given out the best results the school has ever seen? It's why I've been here for 20 years. The principal's like, so you're admitting to saying like everything that you said? She's like, yeah, like that's how I run my classroom, and I was told I could run my classroom the way I want to. And the principal's like, yes, you can run your classroom in the way you want to, in the sense that you can teach whatever you want, you can test however you want, and you can mostly punish however you want. However, like this is different. Like, this is a whole new category. And she's like, no, like this is an excuse that this kid is coming to me because he's lazy and wants more time. And the principal's like, that's just simply not true. Like, just because you weren't born with what he was born with doesn't mean that somehow you're not lazy or another student isn't lazy, but he is. Like, I am like demanding that you give him like extra time. And the teacher says, no, I'm not going to give him extra time. So at this point, like, the principal's like, okay, I'll call you back once I've made my decision. Gets off the line. And at this point, Chip's like, So anyways, the principal gets off the phone and is just like, so. And Chip immediately has an idea. So Chip says, hey, this will not be a problem. All you got to do, move me to the other section. And the teacher's like, it's kind of full. Like, we could maybe we could squeeze you in. And Chip's like, look, obviously, this would not be great. And Chip's like, I'm not trying to say anything, but look, this is a pretty big deal that she's denying me this. But I also can see that she's been around here for a long time. And it would probably be a pretty big deal if, get between her. Like, I understand she's kind of, in a sense, tenured in, even though she's not actually tenured in. It would be really complicated to let her go or to figure out something. And she's very, stuck with it, right? And the principal's like, He's like, look, move me to the other class. I know for a fact the teacher would be cool with this. If you move me into the other class, then we'll be cool. And the principal's like, okay, I think that can be arranged. And at this point, Chip's like, wait, but if I'm going to be moving to the other class because of how traumatic an event this was, I need someone there to support me. I need you to move Ben in as well. And the principal's like, I can't be moving everyone, and I don't even know if Ben wants to move. And Chip's like, trust me, he does. And look, if you do these things, I'll shut up and go away, and I won't give you more problems. The principal's like, oh my God, like I can't be doing this for people. And he kind of like looks around and thinks about it for a second. And then is like, you know what? I'll get back to you within a couple hours on my decision. Like, check your school email. So anyways, right, Ben immediately gets in Ben and Chip immediately after. I think Chip was like, or Ben, sorry, was like waiting outside or was waiting near. He's like, what happened? And he's like, Long story, but there's a chance that you and I are going to be moving to the next class. And Ben's like, no way, no way, no way. So anyways, a couple hours later, Chip like asks mom, he's like, hey mom, have I gotten any new emails? And she's like, not that I know of, but I'll go look. So she goes down, opens up her computer, opens up the email, and she's like, oh, this is weird. It says that you're being moved to section B, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And Chip's like, just has this little smile. And he goes to the house phone and calls up Ben. And Ben's mom picks up and he's like, hey, like, is Ben around to talk? She's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, picks up the phone. He's like, Ben, have you looked at your school email? And he's like, no. He's like, can you go do it? So Ben walks over to like the house computer, whatever, opens it up. And he's like, oh my God, dude. Oh my God. Oh my, is this you? Did you do this? And he's like, yep. And Ben's like, dude, you're actually a legend.